And let me just give you a little bit about Art's background here. Art has provided leadership and innovative thinking for Little Giant Ladder Systems since the company set up shop in his father's garage. Art started as a production line worker and worked his way up to become quality control manager, regional sales manager, and executive vice president over sales. As chairman of the board, Art guides the direction and growth of Wing Enterprises, Incorporated, the parent company of the Little Giant Ladder Systems, and several other wholly owned subsidiaries. And as president of Little Giant Ladder Systems, Art oversees all aspects of marketing, sales, budgeting, motivating, and in general guaranteeing the overall success of the company. Art was the creative force behind the company's record-breaking television infomercials, co-writing and producing 3 of the most successful 30-minute infomercials of all time. He's also consulted on the very successful Little Giant Extreme campaign, which is still enjoying a successful run. In his spare time, and I'll talk about that in a second, Art serves on the Board of Trustees for the Utah Valley Healthcare Foundation and is chair of the fundraising campaign. He's also a donor and member of the board of the groundbreaking Roots of Knowledge project with Utah Valley University. This project chronicles the human quest for intellectual advancement and progress. Art is also an administrator of the Wing Family Benevolent Fund, which has helped countless families and individuals in need. The fund also supports several key charities, the Honoring Heroes Foundation, which supports the family of fallen law enforcement officers. Is that the one that involves you driving around at very high speeds and getting tickets that go to these people? Yeah, that's what I remember. Good. American Indian Services, which provides scholarships to American Indian children from all over the country, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints humanitarian disaster relief efforts around the world. Art serves on the National Advisory Council for the Master of Business Administration program at the Woodbury School of Business at UVU. He also has equity positions and advisory roles in several companies, including Zoolander, not to be confused with Zoolander, an upcoming movie, and Rec Fuel, and serves in an advisory position on the board of the American Wind Energy Association. He's also a principal in the consulting firm Direct2 Global, with the mission to take business from its current state to the next level by leveraging worldwide manufacturing, sourcing, and marketing relationships. Art considers the employees of Little Giant Ladder Systems to be the company's greatest assets and believes in treating them as such. He's an avid reader and enjoys traveling, golfing, and riding motorcycles. He speaks German fluently, and he resides in Provo with his wife, Cindy, who, by the way, decided it was less painful to go to the dentist today than to hear her husband speak again. But they enjoy spending time with their 3 children and 2 grandchildren. One of his children, Paxton, is here today with us. Raise your hand if you would there, Paxton, who's also playing a role in the company now. And I'd just like to say, as someone who knows Art a little more perhaps than the bio would suggest, Art is probably one of the hardest working individuals that I have ever known. I tend to travel a fair amount and rack up a few frequent flyer miles, but Art is on the road kind of incessantly, marketing the company, growing the company, and doing great things. And yet he finds time to do events like these and to support others in his neighborhood and in the community in which he resides. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Mr. Art Wing.
Thank you. I'm assuming the mic's live. First of all, I've either seriously overdressed or you guys are all underdressed. I'm here to spend a few minutes with you and tell you about Wing Enterprises, Little Giant, and kind of where we came from, how we got here, and what the next generation will look like. And I'm going to try and do that in a half an hour, which will go by really quickly. I think it was Henry Ford that said, and I'm probably wrong, if you believe you can, or if you believe you can't, you're right. And there's a lot to that. And as Norm said, I do work a lot. I'm a firm believer in the harder you work, the luckier you get. I'm trying to get more balance in my life and stay married and do all that good stuff. But the one point that Henry Ford and I differ on is he once said that you can get our car in any color you want as long as it's black. And we have found that it's important to listen to the voice of the customer and give them what they want. And there's a fine balance in that, because if you try and please everyone, you'll be out of business very quickly, and if you don't do it enough, you'll be out of business very quickly. So it's been a balance of that. But let me just back up, and I'll take 4 minutes, and tell you the Little Giant story, if you will. So a million years ago in the 60s, my dad met my mother. She was the Burgermeister's secretary in Germany. He was on a assignment with the military. They ended up getting married. We had 7 children in our family. During 1972, he had a chance. He was selling life insurance for Beneficial Life. He had a chance to go back to Germany and open up a brokerage inside of bases with the premise of selling life insurance to GIs. What that afforded us is we went to German schools and got immersed in that for 2 years. On the tail end of that trip, he ran across what is known, it used to be the Waku ladder, it's now the Little Giant ladder. And we brought it over. At age 13, I started working 20 hours a week during school weeks, 40 hours a week during the summer, and had a few other jobs besides that. So I just really loved working. If I have to thank my dad for anything, he taught me that there's a lot of satisfaction in doing that. So we began importing them from Germany. At the time, you could probably buy a 6-foot step ladder for like $29, $39. Our ladder sold for $300. So it was a bit of a challenge. We overcame that. I went through several revolutions. And how many of you here know what a Little Giant ladder is and how it works? Wow. All those millions on the infomercial paid off. Sometime during the late 70s, early 80s, the Deutschmark devalued to the dollar and messed everything up, and our costs went up 4 times. And we decided to become a licensee and a manufacturer. And ever since then, we have begun manufacturing, innovating, and doing whatever. So what you see in front of you is the classic Little Giant that will give you a step ladder. It'll give you 4 different sizes of step ladder. So if you needed a 4-foot, a 5-foot, let's say a 6-foot, a 7-foot step ladder, it'll all do those really, really safe and really quick. Along the way, we began patenting and getting IP on our products. You notice the rungs are always flat. A step ladder at a perfect angle is 75.5 degrees. At an extension ladder, it should be at 75 degrees. This trapezoid rung is patented, so it's always level at 75.5 degrees. Helps you stay there. If you happen to need to get up against the wall, you can drop it down, bring it up against one side, and they'll give you a 90-degree ladder so you can work in a corner and face your work. This particular application helped us get entrance into the military, and we became a mil standard prime government contractor because it's important that you don't touch the skin on aircraft. And so that helped the company grow. Through the 80s and the 90s, we were a nice little $20, $25 million company, had our ebbs and flows, and continued to grow. But there was a time I'm going to say it was the fall of, it's probably the summer of, it was the summer of 2003. Sorry, I'm having a senior moment. But there was the back page of the USA Today was Home Depot carrying that ladder as it stood at that time for 1/4 of the price of what we were selling it for, and we had 6 months left on our IP or patents. And so we had a meeting and we decided to write an infomercial because we do a clever little demonstration in about 500 events a year where we go out and we show the product, we take orders, and basically we use that format of the infomercial. That's what we decided to do, is take it and run it with an infomercial, and it became, what I was trying to do with the infomercial was I was trying to break even. In other words, if you go to Madison Avenue and say, I want to do a campaign, in the 70s, it would be typically a magazine or a television thing, and then at the end of the year, you would measure your success. I wanted to use an infomercial to break even. So I would be able to sell enough to offset it, and I would basically get nationwide exposure. I like the fact there was a 29.5-minute format, so you had lots of time to explain features and benefits, different acts, times for calls to action. But what went wrong in a very, very good way was that it was somewhat successful. So we went from 300, the week we launched, we went from 300 ladders a day to 3,000 ladders a day. We grew at 600% the first year, 660% the second year, and about 690% the third year. And the thing I'm most proud of is that we financed it all out of cash flow. So there was never any outside VC money, any outside debt, anything else. It was all plowed back into it. Infomercials are supposed to run about 18 months, and then they've run their course. They go through retail. And at that point, you either need to come up with a new product or you're out of it. We just began our 14th year and third revolution of the infomercial, and it's still doing quite well and still gives us lots of stuff. So this is the last version that we did on the infomercial. The first one was a simpler ladder. For the final one, I needed some facelifts, so we came up with a new patented hinge. It does a couple of things. The top two objections on this product have always been price and weight. So this ladder, in the spring of 2004, when the infomercial launch, was 3 payments of $89.95 or $359.80, I think, something like that. We do make different sizes. Today, that's exactly still the same price. So it works. And we are about twice to 4 times what our competitors are. And about half the competitors are out there. We're actually building their products for them, and I make more on those than I do on my own. So it works out pretty good. What we did also was to get over the weight objection. We just added simply wheels, so you never have to carry your ladder. And it was a very inexpensive item to do and created a great upsell for about 5 million users, and it was a really good profit center for us. So those are a couple of things that we've done. We still continue to do 500 events a year. One thing that we did suffer from during that time, about the mid-2000s, was channel chatter. We had it in so many places at so many prices. It was mapped, but it was in so many places. I think Linens and Things, of all things, was doing about $8 million a year. Bed Bath & Beyond was doing $12 million a year. This is like not a traditional channel for a ladder. So we had it in a lot of different places, and that's part of my message today is I am a big proponent of doing things differently than everybody else is doing them. As soon as you do something the same way everyone else does, you've entered the commodity business and you've begun the race to the bottom. So I like to do things differently, and I like to do things typically more expensively. And what that does is it raises the barrier to entry for any competitors coming in and keeps you relevant as the market leader in that space. In our spare time, we started using 5 factories in China. We still have a factory in Springville. We brought a factory on in Brazil, one in India, and we're doing one in Vietnam right now. And we have offices in 53 countries, so it became a global product. Every country has its own standards, so we have to have 53 different versions of this crazy thing to meet local compliances. But we don't have a lot of competitors in our space as far as the high-end stuff. So that's where we're at. That's kind of got us to 2006, 2007. 2005-ish, I thought, let's take 5 or 10% off the top line and let's create an innovation department and let's create product. So I ended up having 6, 7 engineers. Most of the time, just looked like they were standing around daydreaming, but they were thinking of new ideas. And we did that for about 2.5 years. It was a lot of fun. Came up with a completely new line of ladders, rolled them all out, and pretty much everybody hated them. And trying to figure out what the disconnect on that was, was that we built stuff that was cool to us. We didn't listen to the voice of the customer. And from that point on, we pretty much shelved all those items, wrote off all those R&D dollars, and most of those products don't exist anymore. And we started going out and talking to customers. We started listening to the voice of the customer, and we started designing around that. A couple of cool things that happened. This ladder literally is indestructible. If I were to sell you one, and I've actually had this happen, it'll last a person's lifetime, and a lot of times when the parent passes away, this is the one thing that the family's fighting over who gets it. So not a great continuity model for revenue. You're going to reach saturation at some point. So we started listening to the voice of the customer, and we came up with a couple of other different items that are unique. So we decided to get into traditional products. So this is a step ladder. Everybody's seen a step ladder, right? Nothing real great and exciting about a step ladder. Well, according to the customer, and we went after high-end customers because we pretty much only do one A rating, which is 300, or one AA rating because America's gotten larger, which is 375-pound rating. This is what we came up with. This is what they wanted. So we have this. Everything we do creates a lot of IP or patents. So while the ladder industry over the last 75 years has created a handful of patents, we over the last handful of years have created 75 patents, and we continue to do that. So we generate a lot of IP, so once we get into a space, we can own that space and control that space and control channel chatter. We do multiple branding, different branding for different customers. As we sit here today, we're Amazon's #1 ladder vendor worldwide. Costco sells about 1 million units a year for us. QVC does about half that much. So anyway, we started with the step ladder, and we listened to the customer. So the first thing is you'll notice there's no rung sitting right here, and I'm sorry if I'm ignoring anyone. There's always a rung right here. Does anyone know why there's a rung right there? Most people don't. Because OSHA says you can't go higher than this rung right here. So our argument was this rung represented the place to hold the sticker that says you cannot climb above this. So we removed it and got a patent for that. We also made this a wider step so it's more inviting and more comfortable to work with. So you're up here, you're doing your thing. We did a couple of knee indents here so they could stay centered. You should keep your belt buckle between the rungs on a ladder. The #1 cause of ladders is overreaching. We did have one customer that said 25% of their accidents last year were the person who's ever missed the last step on a staircase before. So that 25% of their accidents were missing the last step. So we invented a cue. It's called a ladder cue, another patent. So when you get to the bottom, you know you're at the bottom, and that customer is a customer for life. The mining industry told us, awesome stuff, but I can't find a level place in the whole mine that I'm working on. So I either have to use it tipsy, or I got to prop it, or I got to dig a hole, or whatever. And we just said, no problem. Let's make you a ladder that will adjust pretty much any which way you want it to adjust. And so they are able to use it on any circumstance. And again, now mining customer is a customer for life. All these simply retract. And again, I think that has 3 patents on it. So the innovation part has been really good. So this is a simple step ladder. Everyone else is getting $69 for theirs, and we get something like $269 for ours. And they're happy to pay it. They're actually thankful that you designed something that's useful for them. One really cool benefit that came out of this, us going after this industry, was that the professional user, the mines, the telecoms, your Dish, your DirecTV, all those people, and we didn't know this going in, where this one is going to last you the rest of your life, that customer has a safety inspector that looks over it every day. And most safety inspectors are actually looking for footprints right here because that's where they're working. And they also have ladder training once a month. So the upside for me is everything I sell is highly litigious because ladders are litigious. But now I'm working in a safer environment, and they have to take ladder training once a month. They have a safety engineer looking over their shoulder. But the really cool thing about the whole thing is every 3 to 6 years, they take every single ladder out of their lineup, which they don't care how much it costs, and they cut it in half and buy another one. So all of a sudden, we have a continuity model. So that's what we did on the step ladder. The extension ladder, and I just brought a couple of a piece here. We've done a ton of extension ladder stuff. To me, it was insane. If you look at these step ladders, OSHA and ANSI say that for every foot you go up, you have to go out 1 inch on flare. If you're not compliant. Well, on an extension ladder, you can go 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet, and you can have that same 12, 13 foot. It made no sense to us at all. So one of the inventions, and we probably got 35, 40 inventions on extension ladders, was what we call a sumo stance. And so now you take your ordinary extension ladder, and you just increase the stability by about 600%. Most people don't know that on a 28-foot ladder, if you're off a 1/4 inch at the bottom, you're off about 5.5 inches at the top. So even if you have your belt buckle in the middle and you overreach, because most people will overreach because they're too lazy to go down or move it over 3 feet, the ladder is going. This eliminates this to a great degree. It also got over the other problem. Dish, Direct, and a bunch of the other telecoms have a shovel and or bricks on their vehicles. If you find a low spot or a high spot, you're supposed to prop it up or dig out the other side. They don't always do that. It's too big of a pain. So we actually made it so you could adjust either side. And so you've got the width and the adjustment so they can use it safely. We also have to where most ladders have a rope down the middle. That's a trip point, and it's actually hard to pull. So we patented double pulleys, and we put them on the side, and that's another pain point that we eliminated. Most of you are climbing now. OSHA is requiring that you tie off. If you go above 6 feet, the new law is you have to be tied off. Now, the big challenge with that is, if I was going to work on that light, I don't know how I get tied off to that before I get up to that. So we invented a line of cages because there was a loophole in there that says if you're in a fully enclosed cage, you don't have to be tied off. So that's a whole other vertical that we own, and it has a lot of IP on it. You have to have a fall harness. We have a line of ladders that actually uses the rope in the ladder as part of the fall harness. So as soon as your ladder goes up and over and hooks onto a cable strand or whatever, which is another patented item that we have, you are locked into there and you're very safe. So lots of innovation, lots of stuff. But the big takeaway from that was just getting and listening to the voice of the consumer. You guys can create all day long. If I can think of one company that's done something contrary to that, and it's very difficult to do, pre-iPod, nobody knew they needed 45,000 pockets in their pocket, 45 songs in their pocket. Apple did a marvelous job of creating something and then educating you to that you need it, and they dominate that market. That is a tough way to go, but this is a better way to go as far as doing something that's scalable. I'm a really huge fan of UVU students. I speak here and at another university that's not that far away. And it's amazing to me how much more prepared you guys are to go out into the stream of commerce and start producing and contributing day one, whereas the other, to me, it seems like they are ready to get lost in a Fortune 500 company for a couple of years till they find their place and do their thing. So I really love the environment here as far as just being able to be grounded and realize there's no point into going business. Now, sales is one of my passions, and also manufacturing is one of my passions. Your people always will be your greatest asset. You do need to take care of them. You don't take care of your people, everything is going to go bad in a big way. So we do that first, but if nothing's ever sold, is there a reason to have a building? Is there a reason to have an office, a receptionist, a factory, anything? It's got to be sold. So selling, to me, is the number one thing that you have to do. And so that's been my passion for a lot of years, and I do that. I was supposed to share some anecdotes or things that would help you with choosing a career. My banker once told me, never own anything that eats while you sleep. You guys all know to buy low and sell high. But you guys are at the crossroads of trying to figure out where you want to go. And I recently did a lecture on ethics. And I would challenge all of you at this point to figure out what you plan to be doing, what position you plan to have in that organization, and then kind of align your personal values with that. Because I think a lot of people go through the education process, get the degree, get the route, and get caught in a catch-22 in that they're asked to do unethical things that are not of their value system, but that's what the company wants you to do. So keep that in mind when you're choosing a career path to where you can make sure you end up where you want to be, you enjoy doing what you're doing, but you also are not going to be put or painted into a corner where you have to do things that you would question unethical. So, and ethics is a thing that cuts pretty wide across a company. I mean, it could be as small as walking down and talking to your CFO and saying, we're on net 30 with most of our customers, let's go net 45. Let's use everybody's money for 45 more days. I think that's unethical, so we don't do that. And the other thing that's absolutely missing in today's environment is under-promising and over-delivering. If you can get to where you do that, it used to be the norm, and now it's a novelty. Everywhere we build a factory, we also do a first-to-market play. So we entered China about 12 years ago, and China has its own unique system of doing business, most of which, I don't care what religion you're part of, it's not ethical. But we refused to do that, and we kept pounding away and just doing our thing and under-promising and over-delivering. And after 12 years, we are the number one ladder company in China. It took a long time. The next 10 years, it'll actually start paying back out because they've got to do a better job on figuring out how they sell. But stick to your ethics, stick to what you know, and stick to doing the right thing. Trying to think what else. Seeing if everyone's awake. I think I'm going to take another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll open up to questions. So if you want to think of a question to ask me, that's fine. So if you look at Wing Enterprises today, it's a very different company. About a third of our business is consumer-based and doing very, very well. It's growing at about 15% a year. The rest of it is on the safety vertical, and it's growing at 25% year over year. We pride ourselves on not having debt. We have no outside owners. It is a privately held company. I am a big fan of privately held companies. I don't like, I would not consider going public because I think most of the decisions you're making are for shareholders or your quarterly call that you've got to make to report to your shareholders. I don't like the idea of outside VC coming in because you end up making decisions based on what they want to do. So I like kind of being in control, and I'm a big fan of having your cake and eating it too. So that's where we stand today. It's a solid little company. We tend to make payroll month after month and just kind of plug along and do really well. And it's been a lot of fun. I spent the week in Knoxville, Tennessee on a not so fun part, and that is I do all of our legal work on our side in my spare time. So we had a party that fell off a ladder. Well, actually, they fell off the roof. The ladder didn't move or break or do anything, but they would have liked to check for $3.5 million. So we had a 5-day trial and went through the whole thing. Long story short, since the inception of this company, we have never settled a lawsuit or a claim, and we've never lost a lawsuit. So we tend to underpromise and overdeliver on quality and in delivery and in everything else. That having been said, our 2016 focus is we have to do better. Grainger is one of our customers, Amazon is one of our customers, Costco is one of our customers. All of those have report cards on how timely you take a purchase order and get it out the door. So you'll get a 80% rating on time. You're usually responsible in today's environment, and this is why it's key to have a good product, is you'll get a purchase order. Purchase orders used to be a one-page affair. They'd give you a purchase order, and that was it. That was yours, and now they're typically 10, 12. I've seen them as long as 30 pages. The last paragraph on them says they can basically return anything they want for any reason, and you'll pay the freight coming back. So it's super important to build something they want. It's super important to build something they'll need, and it's super important to deliver what you promise they'll deliver them. Otherwise, you're going to be in the freight business, which is not what you want to be, and the return business. Integrity goes a long way. I mentioned China. I had an order with Home Depot 2 years ago. It was for 27,000 pieces. And between the time I began the process of building for that promotion, it was about 18 months out, and the time we got to where we were starting to deliver, we had ran into some problems with our factory in India. The price of petroleum had gone crazy, unlike what it is today. Freight had gone crazy. Everything had gone crazy. Bottom line is, I was upside down on the deal, and they called and they knew I was upside down on the deal. And I said, no, I gave you my word. We will deliver the order. So we delivered the order. We delivered it on time. The part that I liked the least about it is I delivered them a $700,000 check with their order, because that's what it cost me to do that order. But those type of things and just doing what you say you're going to do sounds ultra simple. Business is just really one big game. It's super simple. I really believe the honest and the best products will prevail. I don't think you have to be the biggest. I don't think you have to be the best. You should strive to be the best. I will tell you right now, we will never be the largest ladder company in the world. I have no design to be the largest ladder company in the world. To be the largest ladder company in the world, you would actually have to employ an actuary. They would do a calculation that goes something like this. 27 people are going to die this year, so we need to build in this much to offset that expense. We don't employ an actuary. We only build products that we would want our wives, our kids, our family using, that are super safe, super strong. That doesn't appeal to everyone. We're never going to be number one on price, but we will have you as a customer for life if you buy our goods. So it's just, as weird as it sounds, in this decade, being honest with people, being on time, doing what you say you're going to do, and doing it the best you possibly can are enough to set you apart from everybody else that's out there. And typically, if you look at a lot of corporations, it's the second corporation that gets into it that is the most successful and most profitable. I think Avis is more profitable than Hertz. They'll never be as large as Hertz. They don't spend any money, as much money as Hertz, but they continue to plug along, and that's their spot. Number 2 is not a bad spot to be. I own another company called Direct to Global, so I do a lot of consulting with startups. One of the things that we do with customers as we bring them on and they're rolling out is I will typically roll out the product and the knockoff at the same time. And typically I make more off the knockoff than I do off the name one. But either way, there's usually enough room in most verticals and space for 2 players, but not 3. So that's one of the things we do with customers. And just, it's worked really, really well. So. What do we got? 7 passed. Let's pass this around, see if anyone's got any questions. Norm knows I'm not nearly as long-winded as most of your speakers probably here are. So,
how about I start with the first question? You've got all these different manufacturing plants across the world. How do you decide which one manufactures what product?
Pretty much all of them manufacture everything. And some people would say that's anti-American, but we actually embrace globalization. At any given time, right now the Brazil real is taking a beating. China is, I'm getting the best conversion rate I've ever gotten. So we mix and match, we'll grab components, we do whatever. We do still have ladders that are 100% assembled and built in the United States. And I predict within a decade or less, pretty much everything that is consumed in a country will have been built in that country. Just because a decade from now, China will not be competitive in the United States. The next land mass that has 1 billion people is India. India is 72 nations that speak 72 different languages that all, it's a jumbled mess, and they have no infrastructure. So they will never become the China that exists. So after that, there really aren't any huge land masses of 1 billion people. And what you'll have is you'll have people starting going back. So I'll probably have an Eastern European plant that'll provide that. I'll have my Indian plant that will provide that. China will provide for the Pacific Rim. Occasionally we may get components if everything lines up or somebody has some expertise, but we really do embrace it. I do think Made in America is awesome. Personally, I think Walmart broke everybody of that concept, because you could have gone to the shop next door 10, 12, 15 years ago and paid an extra 40% and got that thing made in America, but Walmart has rolled over those guys and got you to buy what's made in China. So it's not as important as it once is. I think it is good. The way we hire our manufacturing employees, since we're ebbing and flowing all the time with world markets and whatnot, the way we do that is we have a core of about 200 employees that are on the manufacturing side. And those guys don't ever need to look over their shoulder. If China is giving stuff away, I'm still going to keep those 200. If the market goes crazy and I have more business than I need, we'll typically bring in 100 or 200, 300 temps, whatever we need to get it done. And then as that spike recedes, if we still need more manpower, we'll hire away the best of the temps and let the rest go, but the 200 core always stay, and they're always been with us. So if you can imagine building an aluminum ladder, it's not glamorous, it's not fun, it's not, it's dirty work, it's hard work. Right now our average tenure with our company is 17 years. So people come, and that's in the back, in the office, wherever. Sometimes I wish they'd leave sooner. But no, it's being good to them, and it always comes back. Any other questions?
Say it loud, because it'll take me
You got
10
10
minutes to get
minutes.
up there.
What do you do for employee appreciation? And why does that push for long-term
Okay. Well, I would have to say the first thing that we do is we actually give them a lot of respect. We do a lot of management by walking around. I spent a lot of time in the plant today, and we do that. We recognize them as individuals. We pay at or above the grade. We incentivize people. If you have a good idea, we will actually cut you in on the profits of what you come up with, and you will share in the revenue. Benefits-wise, there's probably companies that do better than we do, but we do treat people with an extreme amount of respect. You get your birthday off with pay. That's huge. And you do get a 2 weeks' worth of salary or your wages as a Christmas bonus every year. Lots of little things. We have a Christmas party. We have a summer Hummer we bring the whole family. We have some fun. But basically, I would just say it's just treating people with dignity and respect, paying them well, recognizing them when they do well. And quite honestly, I don't think you're doing any favors to anyone when you don't point out that they're not doing it right. The older I get, the quicker I make difficult decisions. So if someone's not good, I will let them know they're not good very quickly. I think there's coddling somebody that's not doing that is actually not doing them a service in their own personal life, because they may or may not be aware that they're not competent or doing enough. And the longer you let that go, the longer they're not going to progress as an individual. So we spend a lot of time building people, and the byproduct is ladders.
So what is the most difficult thing to start business in Brazil and China? What you faced, to start?
Okay. Well, I would have to say in both those markets, it would be graph and unions. China, less so on graphs, but they have I don't drink tea, but basically every meeting starts with a tea ceremony. So the first 15 minutes, people wonder what's wrong with me anyway. And then we get down to business. If we decide to do something, then when you go out afterwards in China and you celebrate in a fashion that I don't celebrate, so I usually pass on that. So I'm not the most popular guy, and so it took a while to get traction, but they understand that now, and we do that. Brazil is extremely rooted in graph and also in unions. They have pretty much a 35% tariff on anything coming into their country. So if you're going to sell in Brazil, you actually need to have operations on the ground, and you need to have experienced people that are running your plants that know how to deal with the unions. I've seen a couple of situations where they've hired somebody and they knew within an hour that person was a horrible hire and they needed to get rid of them, and it took them 18 months to do it. So you need to really be careful and deal with professionals, because, if you went out and hired 100 of those, you're going to be stuck for 18 months and you're probably going to be upside down. But aside from that, it's just really, you have to, and Norm Dean Wright here travels a lot. There's a lot of traditions around the world that you have to overcome as well. When I went into China, it was the same time Home Depot went into China, and they went into the biggest markets, and they plopped down 16 just picture-perfect Home Depots, and I think it was 24 months. They pulled up stakes, they left, and they never came back. Now, why did they do that? A couple of reasons. In China, if I'm on the third floor of an apartment building and I'm carrying up a flat of tiles to decorate and do some DIY in my apartment, the entire apartment saying, Mr. Wing has fallen on hard times. He's got to do the work himself. So DIY is not even a concept there. So we had to get over that and find a vertical that will work for. You also have a situation where they're the most capitalistic, socialistic people I know on earth, but they do believe that you doing it yourself is taking it away from your comrade who does that for a living's job. So there's also, so where we at in China is we're actually kind of in the handyman and up department. We don't sell to homeowners. Homeowners don't do their work in India or China. And Brazil is very cost sensitive in there. So those are, you just really have to get accustomed to all of the nuances, and you can get upside down and in financial trouble and hurry if you don't do them right. So, anything else?
Here,
Oh,
I know in China, a lot of American businesses have problems with intellectual property theft. Do you have, like you said, you have a lot of patents. Do you have any problem with that in China?
that's an interesting question. When we went 12 years ago, I went over and probably spent the longest 6 weeks of my life trying to find the right factory. I had an interpreter, and it was really about finding the right person. And most of the factories I toured or visited with, I did not get a good vibe, and I would have my translator say, "I'm sorry, we took a wrong turn, and we made a mistake, and we're out of here," kind of a thing. I did meet a couple of good partners. My company and our board said, we go to China, we're going to get ripped off. My position was, people from China come to America all the time. If they see a good idea, all they have to do is buy one and take it back with them. So why not jump in there and let's make something more off the one that we did? To answer your question, and fast forward to 2016, China is upholding patents much, much better, and is probably in the top 5 of countries for respecting patents in the world right now. They're really trying to go legit. So my IP strategy in 2004 was I would get an EU patent, I'd get one for Russia, I'd get one for England, I'd get one for 50 different countries. It is completely flip-flopped to where I'm just getting the patent in China, and China will actually shut it down on the border, and I don't have to get IP in all the other separate countries. So it's actually cheaper to do, business. I'll finish up on one Chinese anecdote, since there seems to be interest in that. I went on this trip. I don't typically eat breakfast or lunch, but for whatever reason, I was doing 5, 6, 8 tours a day. First of all, the tea ceremony. Once we got past that, then we had to get down to business. But after that, you have to immediately go eat. And Chinese food in China is not Chinese food. But so the other thing they like to do is impress you with their means. So they would order way too much food. So if you can imagine me eating like 6 or 8 meals a day, I was pretty sick by the time I got home after that time. The tail end of that trip, I found the gentleman and the relationship with an extruder and a manufacturer that I still have to this day. We've been doing business for 14 years. And I remember flying back home and just sitting in front of my computer, and I had all of the AutoCAD drawings in an email, and I was getting ready to push send. And I'd go to push send, and I'd chicken out, and I'd go to push send, I'd chicken out, because I'd never done this before. Anyway, great company. I finally said, let's just do it. I pushed send. I sent it over to them. Expected a sample back. I waited 2 weeks, nothing. Called them. They said, we're working on it. Waited 3 weeks, nothing. I waited a month, nothing. 2 months, 3 months. After 3 months, I just said, I don't know what the problem is. But it was a cultural one. And this is one of where we talk about the way they're wired and what's in their DNA. The gentleman said to me, is there any way you can send me a ladder? I said, sure. And I FedExed one overnight. It got there in 48 hours. And in 48 hours, I had back on my doorstep a perfect copy. That's what they were wired to do. They didn't work off drawings. They reversed engineered products on the shop floor. And so that's something that we had to learn over time. Now, as we see here today, yes, they're prevalent in AutoCAD and all of the other packages of software. But that was something that we had to learn, so we spent probably the first 5 or 6 years, we never send drawings. We'd send what we needed done, and they would produce it. Since everything we have is highly litigious, we also do have strict QC measures on the ground. So I have employees that spend like 3 weeks on and 3 weeks off going back and forth. And then I have to personally go every quarter to every factory and witness the testing and everything, so that if I'm required to testify, it sounds better than, I've actually seen it, I've been there, I go there, then yeah, I think they're doing it right. So I think our time is about there. I appreciate you guys staying awake. It's always impressive. I hope you've learned something. And if you ever have any questions or something I can help you with, my email is art@ladders.com. So I'm happy to help you any way I can.
Please join me in thanking Mr. Artwing of Little Giant Ladders.